All right, welcome back. Books of Doom, issue number 2. We are going to go see his time in America in college. We're also going to see him meet Reed Richards. Last time, we saw his little childhood. Him and his mom, his father's death, his mother's death, and him getting recruited, all the fun stuff. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave any other suggestions below. Yeah, let's hop in. My arrival those long years ago was not through the typical means. I had no papers, no student visa. No, what I had was instead my mind, my ability to see further into the future than any scientist these men had ever encountered. That was Von Doom's passport into the new world, and my hosts were eager to harness it for their own goals. With him arriving on a plane down on the United States, welcomed by the military. And the first thing they do is they say, hey, you're going to go to college, but let's see your new laboratory that's going to help the government. It's very close to your university as well. Your real work will be in here for us. In these buildings, you have the finest technology in the civilized world at your disposal. And if we don't have it, I understand that you can probably make it. And Dr. Doom says, yes, well, I am quite skilled at that indeed. And so he says, cool, get accustomed to here. Also, let's take you around campus, fill out your stuff. We have to meet another student. Who is that other student? We will see. It's Reed Richards, by the way. As I said, I saw this American arrangement as a chance to escape to give myself a new beginning. And I know why they wanted me, to maintain superiority in their conflicts with the enemy. But standing in that laboratory, I saw things I never dreamed of. And I realized that Von Doom would not be the only one being used in this bargain. Simply as that, I put the troubles of the past aside to focus on the future. There was a wealth of education and knowledge being laid at my feet, and I would take it all to serve my own destiny. When I closed my eyes that night, in my private dormitory room on the State University campus, I did no longer see the face of the soldier I killed. I did not feel my hands tied around his throat. No, all I felt was the embrace of my parents, both lost beyond the veil. And I slept like a baby. And so the interviewer asks, I thought you were supposed to meet with Reed Richards. Did you meet him that day? Too much has been made of that. I did meet Reed Richards in the science lab that day, and he was the other student the general had mentioned earlier. Reed Richards suggested that we did share a dorm, but we did not share one because the general had already arranged for me to have a secret soundproof lab in mine. They were pretty prepared to have Doom make all of their new weapons for them. And we'll see some of those weapons because most of them are stuff that he still uses current day. And these are the prototypes for some of them also. And when he meets Reed Richards, Reed and him don't really get along. Well, Reed's like, you're kind of cool. I want to talk to you. Screw you, buddy. I don't have time for fun. I have to go back to my other personal space. In truth, my first meeting with Richards left almost no impression. My thoughts were on the expanding horizons before me. It wasn't until class a few weeks later that Richards truly came to my attention, where Victor responds to the teacher saying some stuff that eventually loses him, talking about time. Time exists as a constant, blah, 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 blah. It's not linear. And with the teacher being like, yeah, I don't know what you're saying, man. Just stop talking. Reed Richards comes up and is like, I actually agree with him, saying that he's got experiments with other realms, etc., etc. He's seen aliens, poltergeists. They might actually be instances of different planes. And Reed gets upset and leaves, with everybody thinking, whoa, that's remarkable, Reed. That's pretty cool of you. And then Doom's like, well, screw this guy. He's taking all my glory. And he dips out. Richard's intellect was clearly to be respected, but he was so wide-eyed about the outer planes of reality that surround us, so like a child. But I knew the things dwelling there wished us anything but happiness. And the innocence of this disgusted me, because I saw it reflected around me all over the college campus. These insipid Americans caring about nothing but sports and beer and manufactured romantic melodrama. The crying girls distraught over their latest pitiful breakup. The cheerleaders cheering for the empty victories, all so pretty and vacant. And all the women really like Victor Von Doom, mostly because of his accent. Of course, I could have had any out of them at my whim. I was handsome and confident, and more than that, I was foreign. Well, while I had no interest in these common American pursuits, I did develop a small group of followers, students who felt honored to merely assist in my experiments. He sees no one as his equal. only as pawns, where he grabs this one dude named Kurtz. You are going to be my assistant. And Kurtz pretty much agrees. To my surprise, the military base where my other work was done was filled with much the same insipidness that I found at school. They were so pleased with themselves that they couldn't imagine I might have my own agenda. I had to give them the smallest breakthroughs, basically giving them breadcrumbs in the grand scheme of things while he works on his own pursuits, telling them, yeah, I don't know why everybody in the world really wanted to be the American dream, but since they were so blinded with it, it was easy for me to just fool them. And Doom makes what appears to be the first look at the Doombot. And the Americans ask if he can program it for combat, and he's like, maybe. And anything I wanted from my private laboratory was mine for the asking. Someday soon, I was sure I would have everything I needed for my true breakthrough. He wants to travel to hell and save his mom. That's always been his goal since he was a kid. We saw a bunch of that last issue where he grabbed the spell book and just kept trying over and over again. But 3 years had passed, years of study and experimentation and careful deception. And I must confess, while I remained focused on my mission, I also grew cocky as my intellect sharpened. I forgot my destiny was tied to that of the Von Dooms who came before me. I forgot why I had left my homeland. And in my arrogance, my complacency, I let my guard down for one night. A college party is going on, and he decides to join. But he's been here for 3 years? If I was an American, I'd be like, 3 years, he's doing pretty good. Doesn't matter. I don't think this guy would be any threat. So they offer Doom a beer. He's like, I just wanted to see how everybody else lived their life. Ben Grimm is in the middle of it. That guy's a football star, big on campus. All the girls loving on him. He's giving one a piggyback ride. Wait until he becomes the thing, bro. Nobody's going to love you, big dog. Kurtz even says, hey, man, all the girls have been asking about you, too. They've been asking about me. Since I'm your assistant, I'm getting action just by association. So Doom actually goes off with the girl. This is probably the first girl he's ever been with since Valeria. And technically, he wasn't even with Valeria yet. I can't recall exactly how it happened, which I suspect as a result of my first sampling of alcohol. But somehow, I found myself walking on the grounds with a beautiful girl, whose name I also cannot remember. I was bragging, telling her of my days in Latveria, telling her what the future had in store for me. And then she kissed me, differently than I'd ever been kissed, not gentle like Valeria's kisses. No, there was nothing gentle about this girl, not that I minded. But when I looked into her eyes, I didn't see the beauty and intelligence of my mother or of Valeria. I only saw emptiness, and I couldn't allow it. And I apologize for what happens next, but he throws her on the tree and basically assaults her. The vacant little cretin could not be the one to get behind Von Doom's defenses. And he wraps his hands around her neck and starts choking. Her empty eyes pleaded, but I felt nothing for her, no pity, nothing. And I thought, what kind of man am I? Am I the son of a demon? And then I remembered my mother, and I remembered that last night in Latveria. And of that, nothing else, save the pitiful creature's life. She fled, and I awaited whatever actions would be taken against me, conjuring a story which would convince the authorities of my innocence. So after choking her, she runs away, and he's like, I'm gonna make a alibi. I'm gonna get out of this. I know I am, because I'm intelligent. But no authorities ever came, and indeed the girl in question was never seen at school again. Not by me, at least. Perhaps her shame overwhelmed her, as it should have. So he believes that she just didn't report it, but meeting with present-day Kurtz, we learn the actual truth is that, yes, she did report it. She didn't just quit school, she was forced out. She tried to press charges against Victor, but somebody in the military was like, this guy's way too important, so no, you can't do that. And they came and ended it. Between the school administration and the government, the whole thing was hushed up. Next thing you know, her folks are yanking her out of school, driving her home in a brand new Rolls Royce. Victor continued his studies like nothing had ever happened, but a few of us knew, and it changed everything for us. Victor went from being this eccentric foreign exchange student, whose quirks we mostly just tolerated, to someone who literally scared the hell out of us. And those military backers of his, they knew and they didn't care. They just wanted whatever they could get out of his twisted mind. My boy went home scot-free just because of what he can do. He technically beat the allegations, but everybody knew what his deal was. And he wasn't really that popular anymore. People stayed away from him. And because people stayed away from him, he withdrew even more into his studies. That momentary lapse would not be repeated. I would not let this place, these Americans, get to me. He decided not to feel love. And from the outside, I appeared isolated, but I was not. Lonely. having surrounded himself with just multiple versions of the Doom bots. My work for my benefactors was outpacing even their high expectations, where he creates what seemingly is a prototype time machine, and they have a bunch of monkeys they want to experiment it on. But he's like, yeah, you should be able to travel through time with this. It's not perfect, but the chimpanzee arrived on the platform yesterday, and according to my notes, I was planning to use him as my first subject early next week, so it must have worked if it went back in time. If you don't know, Dr. Doom has made a lot of time stuff. Man manipulates time like crazy. Big user of the time platform. I doubt we'll be able to see that in Doomsday. It just wouldn't make sense. But the monkey arrival confirms that, yeah, we're going to have a successful test next week. And the general makes another statement that catches Victor off guard, is that Reed Richards has also joined the program, specifically wanting to work on the space program. We all know the results of that. The Fantastic Four comes out of that. Victor's only response to that is just keep him out of my way. And the general brings him to another problem, is the quote-unquote Doom bots, as they are, the prototypes. Why aren't these guys alive yet? Where Doom says, the artificial intelligence is too good. They believe that they're alive and real, which makes them harder to program, which is a lie. It's true and also a lie. He should be able to program them. He shouldn't have a real problem with it. But the Doombots do believe that they are the real Doom. He says, don't worry, we should be done soon enough, and then we'll make a stealth bomb. In truth, much as I loathe the men I worked for on that base, the work was still fulfilling. The base and in my private laboratory, which was poised for a breakthrough none of us could have expected. A breakthrough that would strip reality down to its essence, that would allow Victor Von Doom access to all planes of existence, and where I would free my mother from eternity of torment in the Netherrealms. While working on it, somebody breaks into his apartment or his little room. Reed opens the door and starts reading all of his stuff on his table. Mind your own business, big dog. But he compliments Doom. He's like, whoa, you're ahead of the curve. That's pretty cool. So, you're working on dimensional warps and matter transmutation? Some of the equations don't make sense to me. What language is that? And it's either that he means Latvian or it's magic, sorcery that he's going on about. I'm assuming it's the latter. And he tells Reed, yeah, get the hell out of here, man. I don't want you here. Why are you in here? And honestly, he's rightfully so. You just broke into my apartment. Of course, Richards couldn't understand my equations because I'd gone beyond pure science where his intellect was stuck. I finally found the synthesis between my mother's magics and the science that I dreamed of as a youth. That's why he couldn't read it. It was magic. That was going to open the door for me, and I was foolish enough to believe I was prepared for what was behind it. And of course, his assistant that's been there for like 3 years now, Kurtz, is like, you sure about this, Victor? I can't monitor the energy levels the way that it's set up. And in the interview, he's like, yeah, I helped him. I was scared to death of him. All I did was flip a switch, and the whole place blew to hell. It cost me this eye, and I lost my degree. And getting some clarification, the interviewer's like, it blew up right away? No, it wasn't right away. Time seemed to freeze. Victor looked like he was disappearing or covered in static. But for a moment, just before everything exploded, I heard him say something. And he says, please, mother, I'm so alone. And the reality of this is that it did indeed work. And Victor tells us that, yeah, it was nothing like I expected. I thought for the first few hours that I would lose my mind. Finding her would be like catching a single drop of rain falling into the ocean, where he does indeed find his mother. But at last, after what seemed like weeks, I caught sight of her, surrounded by fire that held no heat, but I still managed to burn her constant tears. Where he finds his mother, he tells her, I'm going to save you. So terrible as her fearful rejection was, the reason for her fear was many times more terrible. With Mephisto coming in, Mephisto's like, yo, who's this guy, Cynthia? Oh, this is your son. Where he says, we don't really take trespassers here. And he sends Victor Von Doom out of his domain. That's what causes the explosion. What seemed like weeks was only seconds in reality. I do not, of course, remember the explosion, but I'll never forget the scream that left my mother. The next thing I remember is waking up a few days later in a military hospital. Within hours of consciousness, The dean of the university was at my bedside, not to comfort his prize student, no, but to inform me that I was expelled, that it nearly cost Kurt his life, and that I was a disgrace. So boom, kicked out of the school. Does that mean he's kicked out of the government program? We'll see. I stopped listening because I didn't care anymore. And I didn't care when General Matterson stopped in later to tell me that my expulsion would not affect my work for his people. I didn't care about anything but my failure, my weakness. Yeah, the government's like, oh, you can still hang out with us. It don't matter, man. They didn't care. So he got expelled from class, and then he stays with the government. So where are you living at? Where are they just going to let him live in the dorms or in the government base? It doesn't matter. Days passed without a word from me. I was still lost in that hellish realm in my mind, agonizing over my every misstep. And then I removed the bandages. The agony only grew worse. Where he looks and sees that his face is indeed scarred. This is the reason why he wears that terrible mask on his face. I mean, it's a cool-ass mask. I would wear the cool-ass mask. But the scars on his face really just symbolize failure and weakness. That's why he doesn't like showing them. And Doom tells us, yeah, those scars, I could still feel the demon's claws touching me. And when I looked at what was left of me, the cold fire touched me to my soul, and his voice echoed in my mind, accompanied by my mother's screams. I had lost all my years of planning and work, and I was but a bumbling fool. A fool who would never be able to look himself in the mirror again. A week later, locked in bitterness, I was plotting my escape. I would not stay here. Would not work for these smug Americans. It was my reliance on their technology that had weakened me. Their effusive praise that made me think I was more than I was. That I was ready. And since they had taken everything that mattered from me, I would leave them with nothing as well, as he reprograms the Doombots to just cause major damage in the military base. He sends them destroying multiple soldiers throughout, just catching them on fire. All my inventions, my breakthroughs, every scrap of knowledge I had amassed for their use would be destroyed. And then they set themselves to self-destruct sequence. But these are the prototypes for the Doombots. This is the tech that he makes for himself now. He doesn't give that access to the Americans anymore. And so with the generals like, what the hell is going on? They see the explosions outside and they're like, I want Doom for this because we know that this is this guy's fault. He's the only one that can reprogram these robots. They say, yeah, he's vanished. So it was that I left America a broken man with no thought that I would ever see my homeland again. As he hops on a plane, bandages still on, and a flight attendant asks, oh, does that hurt? More than you can know. So yeah, that's Victor Von Doom's time as an American college student. I know you're expecting more work with Reed Richards, but I guess not this time. Reed Richards is not the main cause of the Scarface. It's mostly his own arrogance. So with that, thank you for listening, watching, and enjoying. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and comment. Peace out.